Hi everybody, welcome to the next episode of Revit API plus Python series. It's time to talk about Revit parameters. This is something you will need to work with a lot. You often need to get parameters, look at their values, and sometimes even write new values. Overall, it's not complicated but might be a little bit confusing in the beginning, because you don't know what methods to use and where to look. There are 5 types of parameters in Revit API: built-in parameter, project parameter, shared parameter, global parameter, and family parameters. But I won't cover the last one in this video. So let's dive into Revit and look at different parameters and how to work with them. So for this video, I'm just gonna use the regular sample project provided by Revit. In here, mostly I will be looking at the parameters of these walls. Let's select this wall, go to Add-ins tab, and with RevitLookup plugin, we can select here Snoop Current Selection. Click on that and it's gonna open this menu. In here, I'm interested in the parameters field. Right here on the left, you can see all available instance parameters for this selected wall, and on the right, more information about it. Let's select built-in parameter called comments and have a look. In here, you can go through and see, does it have a value? It says true. The storage type is string. String means text in programming languages. Is it shared parameter? It tells us false. Then I can see that definition is highlighted. It means it's gonna give me more values to look at. In here, I get the internal definition of the parameter comments. And this is where I can have a look at what's the name of this parameter. It tells me comments. And then most importantly, I can verify is it a built-in parameter or not. Because if it's built-in parameter, it's gonna return me which parameter it is. In this case, it's all model instance comments. This is how it's named inside of Revit API. Now I can close it. I've prepared a few parameters already. So for the shared parameters, I gave the prefix SP. For the project parameter, I gave the prefix PP. For example, this is the project parameter. You can see right here that it says is shared equals to false. And then if I go to definition, built-in parameter is gonna tell me invalid because this is not a built-in parameter. I'm gonna close this. Let's have a look at some of our shared parameters. Right here, right away, it says that it's a shared parameter. The storage type is double. Double is the same as float in Python. It's a decimal number. And if I click on definition, here's the name of the parameter, same as before. The built-in parameter is invalid. This is shared parameter that I loaded in my project. So now let's create an empty button in EFTutor and have a look how can we access our parameter values and how can we change them. I'm gonna close all of this. Then in EFTutor, I have already prepared an empty button. So I can open the script. And this is all it has inside of it. There's some information about the button. Then I have Autodesk imports. I have a few variables for doc, UI doc, and app. And lastly, I have main. So if I'm gonna click on it, I'm just gonna print this statement. It's time to learn how to use parameters with Revit API plus Python. So let's close it. But first of all, I wanna have a look what's the element ID of this wall so I can easily get it inside of my code. And then I can look at the parameters and work with them. I'm gonna go again to Add-ins tab, Snoop Current Selection. Right here I can see the ID, or I can also take it from here. I'm gonna copy this value. First of all, I need to create this element ID. I'm gonna call it wall ID equals element ID, and I'm gonna paste this element ID that I saw inside of my wall. Next, I need to get an actual wall instance. I'm gonna use the doc variable, and then there is get element method, and I just need to provide my element ID. And we're gonna print our wall. Let's comment this out, come back and click on it. Now we're getting the instance of this wall. Next, to get our parameters, I'm gonna look inside of my SnoopDB again. In here, earlier you have seen that we can use this field called parameters to get a list of our parameters. So I'm gonna print it, wall parameters. I'm gonna comment this out because I know what wall I'm getting. And then click on it again. It gives me parameter set. I can turn it in a list, and then it's going to return me a list of all parameters available. Click on it again. Now we can see that there are a bunch of parameters available for us to look at. And we're going to loop through all of them. I'm going to write for P in wall parameters. I'm going to print P. Let's see what it's going to look like. I'm going to comment out this one. I'm going to click on this button. And now I can see I get a lot of objects which are parameter types. We can get different parameters out of it. I want to get its ID, is it shared, what kind of storage type does it have. Sometimes it's also good to know is it read-only or not. Then inside of definition, I want to get the name and built-in parameter to see if it's a built-in parameter or not. Let's close all of that. So right here on the top, I just want to make it more clear what we're printing. So let's make a few more lines. And I'm going to start with the name of the parameter, which is going to be p definition.name. Then the same way we can see if it's a built-in parameter or not. I'm just taking these values from right here. I say give me definition and then give me name and built-in parameter. That's all I want to get from here. The rest I'm going to take just from here. Let's look at its storage type. I'm gonna see if it's read only or not. And I can also see is it shared or not. And to make it more clear, I'm just gonna make this division between different parameters. I wanna make it a string, and I'm gonna add it with format method of the strings. And then same here on the top. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna also align it. I know that pyRevit is not gonna print this empty space right here, just gonna be a single space. So I think we're good to go. Let's come back to Revit and run our script. And you can see it returned us a bunch of information about all available instance parameters of this selected wall. For example, I can see that there is the parameter called top constraint. It's a built-in parameter of wall height type. Has the storage type of element ID. It's not shared and it's not read only. So we can also change it. So this is the type name. It's all model type name. And let's scroll somewhere up. Here is my shared parameter of area. Let's come in here and I'm gonna add my regular comments right here as well. You don't have to make these comments, but I really like to do them because it helps me navigate through my script. So I know that here I'm getting my wall, then I showed you some parameters. Now let's actually look how do we get specific parameters. We could easily add some way here inside of this loop to check if the parameter name equals comments. And I'm gonna just print it's a comment parameter. And let's print this parameter ID. I'm gonna comment this all out so it's easier to see. Then I'm gonna go and run it again. It went through all the parameters, and once it detected comment parameter, it printed this. In general, don't use this method because this is not very reliable. Also, there are much easier ways to get it. So whenever you want to get a specific parameter, the difference if it's a built-in parameter or is it a shared or project parameter. Let's start with built-in parameters. I'm just gonna place this. So right here on the top, we have a wall instance that we are getting, and we're gonna use it to get the parameter of this wall. I'm gonna write get built-in parameters. I know that this is a built-in parameter. So to get it, all I need to do is take our wall variable, then use get parameter method, and inside of it I need to provide my built-in parameter. To do this, I'm just gonna type built-in parameter, and if you have Revit API autocomplete set up, it's gonna be very easy. I'm just gonna type comments, and I can see right here that it says all model instance comments, all model type comments. In this case, I need instance comments. I'll just print it to see what we are actually getting. I need to comment this out as well. So now we can run it and you can see we're getting this parameter. So to get a value of our parameters, we need to look in parameter methods. We can get as double, as element ID, as integer, as string, as value string. These are the files we're going to use to get the value of our parameters. Since we know that this parameter has the storage type of string, we just need to write as string to get its value. Let's come in the console, type here as string, and let's see what it's going to return us. I'm going to click on it. And I can see right here, it returns us the value of these comments. It tells us, I'll tell you a joke about 10-meter wall, but you would never get over it.
Stop it. Get some help.
So let's close it. And let's take some other parameter as well. So I'm going to look at a parameter called type name, because this is something that we're going to use very often. Same as before, I need to go in definition, have a look. What's the name of this built-in parameter? It's all model type name. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to write wall type name equals, and it was all model type name. And we already know that we just have to provide as string in the end to get the value, because I don't need this parameter, I just want to have its value. Now I'm just going to print this variable. Let's come back here, EFTutor, and click on this button again. And you can see it returned us none, which is very strange. Let's go back in parameters and have a look. Here, type name, and it's actually an empty parameter. So we can get the type name differently. For example, I can see that there is a type parameter. In here, as a value string, it's going to return the name of our type. And to get it, it's element type parameter. I'm going to paste it right here. And then I need to return it as value string as we've seen in this menu. Then if I'm going to run it, you can see that I'm getting the type name of my wall instance. We can also, same as before, print different information about all these parameters. I can just copy all of this. And I'm just going to uncomment it. And I need to replace this p variable that we used earlier with something I want to use now. I'm just gonna take this wall comments and replace it everywhere. I'm gonna remove type name, then we can run it. And you can see it tells us here that the name is comments, has the built-in parameters all model instance comments, it has the storage type of string, it's not shared, and it's not read-only. Let's have a look how can we get shared parameters and project parameters. I'm just gonna paste it here, same as before. We can just close all of this. And now let's have a look at our shared parameters. I have it right here with the SP prefix. We can start with the text. If we go to definition, we can see that built-in parameter is invalid. For this, we just need to know the name of our shared parameter. Then go back to PyCharm and type in here sp text equals wall. We're gonna use lookup parameter method. Inside, we need to provide a string with the name of this parameter. I know that it's called sp text, and to get its value, same as before, we can use sString method. Let's take this one, and I'm gonna write getting shared parameters. And if I go to EFTutor and run the button, it prints me the value of this parameter. It tells me, what did the architect say to a circle? You're pointless. So now let's look at more interesting parameter, such as materials, because actually it's going to return us element ID of our material. We can have a look again in here, look for the SP material. Right away you can see that something is already highlighted in bold, and it's going to return us the element ID of our material. As value string is going to return the name of this material. So let's try to get it. SP material ID equals wall lookup parameter sp material, and I need to provide here as element ID, as we have seen it right here, as element ID. It's going to return us this element ID. Now, since I know that this is element ID, to get the material, we can use the doc get element method. Now we just need to provide this, and I'm going to print sp material, and I'm going to print its name. Let's comment this out. As usual, go back to Revit and run the button. And you can see that I got an object which is material type and its name is wood. Another parameter that I want to have a look with you is booleans, which is yes or no parameter. I call it sp boolean. You would expect that it returns us yes or no value, which is also possible by using as value string, but it's more common to use it as integer. And if you look at the storage type, it's actually an integer. So whenever it's true, it's going to return you 1, and whenever it's not true, it's going to return you 0. So to get it, same as before, uncomment it. I'm going to get parameter sp bool, and I'm going to return it as integer. So let's select all of this and comment it out. Also, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this panel, drag it on the menu. So click on it, it returns us 1, and if I deselect it, it returns me 0. And that's how we get our parameters. So I can comment it all out, and then let's have a look, how do we actually get our type parameters? We're going to go back to Revit, select this wall, let's snoop the current selection. Because if you want to get the type parameters, first of all, you need to get the wall type, and then the wall type has its own field called parameters. And inside of it, there's going to be type parameters. You can see right there, there's a type name, there's a type comment, and so on. And you can see that we can get description and type mark because they have some values already written. So to get it, first of all, I'm going to have a look. I can get wall type by just writing wall type as a property. And then to get description parameter, I can look at its definition, and I know that this is a built-in parameter which is called all model description. Let's go and create a variable wall type description. We take the wall type, and then we get parameter. I'm going to provide built-in parameter called all model description, and I'm going to return it as a string. And another one we saw, I think it was something with mark. I'm going to write mark and have a look. There is all model type mark, and I'm going to change this. And I'm also going to print it the same way. Let's uncomment that one. And we click on this button. And right here, it turns us its description and its type mark. Another thing that you might know that in case when you use the wall, floors, and roofs, they're going to be a property called wall type, floor type, roof type. But when you use another family that you loaded, such as for example this one, you can see that it has a class of family instance. And to get its type, you need to use the property called symbol. This is how type is called inside of Revit API. If I click on it, you can see that I get a family instance, and then there are our parameters, type comments, type mark, and so on. So I'm going to comment all of this out. Let's have a look, how do we actually change the value of our parameters? For example, let's get our comments parameter and change it to something else. Earlier, you have seen that right here, we got these parameters. So I'm just going to copy this line from earlier, paste it here. And also, I want to copy that one. I want to separate it from the previous block. This one is going to be called set parameter value. So now that we're going to get these two parameters, we can open Revit API docs and have a look, how do we change the value of our parameters? First of all, I need to find the parameter class. Then inside of it, I'm going to go to methods, and I'm going to have a look what is possible to do. Right here on the bottom, I can see that there is a set method. If I'm going to click on it, there are 4 different options depending on what you're providing inside of your parentheses. I can provide a double, I can provide integer, I can provide string or element ID. And this is all based on the parameter type that it needs. In this case, I know that I need to provide the string to change the text-based parameters. Let's go back inside, and to use this method, we just need to write our variable for our parameter, and then with a dot, write set. And inside of this parentheses, I need to provide a value. In this case, it's going to be text. And I'm just going to write, that was a terrible joke. And if you know any better jokes about walls or architects or whatever related, you can comment better jokes under my video. And let's get this wall comments parameter again and print it as a string. So open up your Revit and click on this button. Are we getting an error? And this is totally fine, because it tells us right here, attempt to modify the model outside of transaction. We see this error because we're attempting to modify our project without creating a transaction. Let's go to Revit API docs and have a look at transaction class. You can see right here, transaction are context-like objects that guard any changes made to Revit model. Which means that whenever you use Revit API, you cannot change your model unless you declare a transaction and you start and commit it. For example, if I'm going to select this wall and delete it, and then when I click here on undo, you can see right here that there are different transactions that happened, and they all have a name. For example, this one is called delete selection. I'm going to remove it because I'm actually working on this wall. Let's go back to Revit API docs and have a look at this class. You can see that there is transaction constructor. There are two methods. We need to provide our document, and then we need to provide the string. This string is going to be the name of our change, which you can see that here it's project parameters, modify element attributes, and so on. Let's make some space here. I'm going to make a variable called t, and it's going to be transaction. As we saw before, we need to provide document and then a string. I like to provide the name of my button, then I know what's changing. Then we need to start our transaction and we need to commit it. And all your changes have to be between. Which means if I want to change the value of this comment, have to be between these two statements. Let's get back to Revit and click on this button. And now you can see that it printed here. That was a terrible jokes. Comment better jokes under my video. And if I select this wall, you can see that it actually has changed here. Let's also try to change parameters with different storage types. Like for example, here I have all my shared parameters. I'm just gonna make it like this, and we're gonna get all of them. The first one is area, then we have boolean, then we have float, the next one is integer, then we have length, and lastly we have text. Let's align all of this so it looks nicer, and then I need to make sure I'm getting the right parameter. I'm gonna copy all of this and I'm gonna paste it inside. So I'm gonna comment this out, and then let's try to change some other values. So we're gonna set area to 100. We're gonna set boolean to be false. So 0 means no and 1 means yes. Set it to 1. Then SP float is gonna be 25.5. SP integer, we're gonna set it to 100. I'm actually gonna change this value right here. So what's next? The length is also gonna be in double. Then to set material, first of all, we need to get the element ID of another material. To make it simple, I'm just gonna go to add-ins tab, RevitLookup, then I'm gonna snoop the whole DB. This is the whole database of our project. In here, you can click on M, and now you can see materials. And let's choose break common. You can see right here that it has the element ID of 440. So new material ID equals element ID 414. And to set it, we're gonna say SP. Actually, I have forgotten to get it. It's gonna equal to SP material. And now we're gonna say set new material ID. If I wanna replace SP text, this time I'm gonna set something completely false. Let's try to set up 1000 and see what happens. So run the button. I think it changed the values, but it didn't write anything. I'm gonna write setting parameters is complete. I'm gonna click on it, and it writes here, setting parameters is complete. Let's select our wall and have a look at the values. I'm gonna bring this console right here so we can compare the values. So the area, we wanted to set this value, and we have completely different value. I'm gonna explain it in a second. Then the boolean was set to true. Then the float is set to 25.5, the same number we provided. Same happened for the integer. Then the length parameter has absolutely different value. I'm gonna explain it second. Change our material to new material ID, which is now break common. And when we tried to change the text to 1000, it didn't do anything. And the worst part that we didn't even get an error. So to fix this, we're just gonna set it to a string. Let's go back in Revit, click on it, and you can see it changed to 1000. So regarding the SP area and SP length, they have different values because internal units of Revit is in decimal feet and not in centimeters or meters or whatever unit you're using. So when I go in parameters, select SP area, you can see that it's actually set the right value as double, 555.55. It's the same value as you can see right there, but it equals roughly to 52 square meters. And if I'm gonna select SP length, you can see the same here. It set the correct value as a double, but as a value string, it returns completely different. And as we saw in area, this as value as string, it's not a very precise value. Because I can see that this value equals 51.612 square meters, but as value string, it's going to return us a rounded value of 52 square meters. And that's how we work with our parameters. There's one last thing I want to show you, it's a global parameters.
Hi everybody, I was just editing this video but I realized that this section about global parameters turned out to be very long and very boring. So I have decided to delete it completely from the video, And if you want to see how to get to global parameters, just have a look at the source file that I'm gonna upload to the GitHub. Let's continue with the video.
So I think I covered everything I wanted about the parameters. And the last thing I want to do, let's make some useful tool that we can do in maybe 10 lines or something. For example, sometimes you want to know the element ID of your elements, especially if you work with IFC files and so on. So let's get all of our walls in the project. Then we're going to get its element ID. I'm going to write it to mark parameter, so it's always stored there. Let's go here. I'm going to paste this block right here. First of all, I need to get all walls. I'm going to use filtered element collector of category, built-in category OST walls, where element is not element type to elements. So this is going to return us a collector of the walls. Then since we're going to make some changes, I want to make transaction. I'm going to make it right here. Let's write writing element IDs to mark parameter of walls. Then in the end, we need to make our commit. Otherwise, Revit gonna crash and say that we never finished our transaction. Then for wall in all walls, I'm gonna get wall mark equals wall get parameter. It's gonna be built-in parameter. Has to do something with the mark, probably all model mark. Then I'm gonna set it to wall ID. I'm just gonna print the wall ID. And to make sure that I'm setting the right value, I'm gonna make it a string. Even if it's already a string, it's a good practice when you set your parameters. So I think we're good to go. And I'm gonna write the script is complete. Comment keyboard emoji in the comments if you're following along. Okay, so I'm gonna click on this button. I can see it printed a lot of element IDs, and then it wrote me the script is complete. Comment keyboard emoji in the comments if you're following along. And now if I click on any of the walls, I should see that in the mark there's element ID, and that's it. And as you can see right here, with just a few lines of code, we made a very practical script that allows us to get all of our walls, get their element IDs, and write to the parameter. And also, I have a little task for you if you want to practice Revit API. You will need a project with a few groups in it, and as you know, when you work in Revit, we cannot filter or schedule our elements based on their group name. So the task would be to get all groups in your project, then they get the group name, and after that we will need to get the all elements inside of our groups. And then for each of these elements, we want to take the group name and write one of the parameters, for example, comments. And thanks to that, later we will be able to create filters to color our groups based on the group name, or also we can schedule and see it. And if you're gonna struggle with this task, or you just want to see how I would personally write such a script, I'm gonna upload a video on my Patreon page where you can see step by step how I would do it, and I try to explain it for beginners. And on this note, I want to thank all my active patrons who support me on a monthly basis. This helps my YouTube channel by covering the cost of some services that I use for making my videos. And you can add your name as well to this list by signing up on my Patreon page. And thank you for watching. My name is Eric Fritz. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.